Welcome to Surviving Society presents the Terms and Conditions podcast, aka the T's and C's. This is our reflection, basically. I'm Chantelle Lewis.
I'm Tissot.
Please bear with us as we are recording remotely. Luckily, we've got our trusty executive producer, Alice, in the studio, who's trying to sort this out for us. We're going to try and do a weekly reflection on basically the sociology of what's happening right now. Just before we get into this, I think it's important that we say something that we're going to try and do. Obviously, the government have said they're offering mainly loans and some grants to people that are in precarious positions. We're very privileged in that we have a strong listenership, we've got a good audience, and what that means is we possibly have access to people that maybe have sturdy incomes and salaries with regards to helping other people out. What we're doing at the moment, and this will be live by the time this episode comes out, is adding some lower tiers onto our Patreon. Basically, what we want to try and do is increase our patrons, but have more people that are kind of on the periphery of academia come and join us for these reflections, these pandemic reflections episodes, and we want to pay them as well because so many people have been out of work now because of this. Like, it is insane how many people that we know, right, that are self-employed. We're a tiny platform, but we want to try and see if we can redistribute any sort of capital we can. But yeah, so let's get into it. Thank you for listening to that bit.
Welcome to the T's and C's.
Tissot and Chantelle.
Also known as the Terms and Conditions.
Right. Well, which one to start, Chantelle? The end of the world's coming. Start anywhere you want.
We've been in contact throughout this, but when we were chatting the other day, when Boris was on TV, when he was like, you are now no longer allowed to leave your house unless it's for shopping or exercise, blah, blah, blah. And you just went to me, it's a wrap. And I was like, oh my God, it is a wrap.
I've been of late reading a bit of Stuart Hall, famous sociologist, political philosopher. Well, I don't know what you'd call him.
He called himself a teacher, didn't he?
He's a culture theorist, isn't he?
He calls himself a teacher. He said, I'm a teacher, first and foremost.
So I've been reading his seminal work, Policing the Crisis, and I kind of have been linking that to what we've been seeing going on in this last week or so. So prior the actual event of the lockdown, in inverted commas, you had this rumour flying around the internet, there's going to be a lockdown. So this became the common language of who you're speaking of, right? That everyone was referring to this culturally as a lockdown. It hadn't happened yet. So Boris Johnson gives his announcement. In nowhere does he use the word lockdown. He says we're going to restrict your movements. Restrictions, right? Because effectively, we're not locked down because we can do certain things, right? What does lockdown mean?
Common is like Centre Parks right now.
Exactly. But look at the word lockdown, we use it in terms of prisons, right? We use it in terms of total shutdown and removal of liberties, right? That you can't do anything. That's what lockdown implies. The primary definer, i.e. the experts, Boris Johnson and his cabinet and the ex-scientists didn't say the word lockdown, they say restrictions, right? The media took the word lockdown and they kind of cut his language down into bite-sized pieces for the masses, right? So the masses start referring to this word lockdown. So now, this word lockdown becomes common knowledge. Now, the experts who first defined this start using the word lockdown as official language. So now you've prepped the mind and prepped everyone so I can take more liberties away when I want to, because your mind's set up for a lockdown. Even though he never said that. That was never the case. So you've mentally prepared yourself for a lockdown, but that was never the action. Stuart Hall talks about this kind of process when he's talking about mugging in Policing the Crisis. You can see how different organs of the state refine that language and start using that language. But this, I've said, they never said lockdown. Lockdown was a word that the common people were using. The experts, the officials, just want to restrict movements. But we've locked ourselves down. So when he does say, we're going to lock shit down, you're ready. You're not going to complain. You've mentally prepared yourself for that.
It is the madness. And also, it's really important to just caveat that. And it's not that we're saying that physical distancing and being physically separate from people isn't really important to fight in this. What you're talking about is actually the sociology of what Stuart Hall told us in Policing the Crisis, how we linked out the intrinsic nature of media descriptors and discourses and how that is used by governments to, as you say, control the masses.
And then what we also have to be careful, and what's kind of shocked me is how the people reacted. become so used to doing what we want. Even if it will save lives, the idea of not being able to do what you want, people have lost their mind. And it shows you how spoiled we've become, how privileged we are. We can literally do what we want, right? And if it comes to saving lives, I'm hearing people saying, it doesn't matter. Some woman said she went to see a pal. She went to see her mate, and her mate's 80. She said, she doesn't care what Boris Johnson said. He's an idiot. And she said, I'm going to see her mate anyway. And I'm like, we've been so used to be doing what we want, even when it came to save lives, we can't sacrifice that anymore. Because that neoliberal idea of individualism, fuck it anyway, and we'll do what I want, is so deeply entrenched in people that they can't share it, even if it meant saving their own family's lives, right? And it's a madness. Like, if you look at the 3 options available of how to stop this virus, the 3 examples given, China being a totalitarian state, South Korea being probably a model democracy, a modern liberal democracy, and the West being traditional post-industrial states. The West, what do? They lie to their population. South Korea were open and transparent, tested, used technology for its benefit, right? So they set up drive-through testing centers. They were testing from the day before it even landed in South Korea. They were testing from day one.
This sort of brings me on to how I've been feeling about this situation and how I've made sense of it, or not made sense of it actually, is that as cynical as I am, like you'll know if you listen to the podcast, I don't have much faith in government. What's been really difficult for me personally is realising that even myself as a very cynical person when it comes to government, that I was completely wrong. I was one of these people that was like, 3 weeks ago I was like, oh, it'll be fine, the government, they'll know what they're doing, they're handling it, blah, blah, blah. I kind of didn't take it seriously until about 12 days ago now, I'd say. And then I was like, shit, they've actually lied to us. I believed what they were saying to us. When they were saying, just wash your hands, I was like, yeah, cool, wash your hands. Like, we'll just got to keep clean, do the hygiene thing. But no, they were gambling with our lives. And that's what I feel like for the past week. I'm out the other end of it now, but it's been me personally coming to terms with that level of deception that the government has gone through with.
But see what you're feeling, that feeling, even though you don't realise that you're tapping into the general zeitgeist, right? The zeitgeist is people don't trust any form of authority, hence the proliferation of conspiracy theories, the 5G, the corona. And this is the thing, because there's even the flat earth thing, because there's a distrust of authority. So people don't believe in anything anymore. And what happens if you don't believe anything? Knowledge is worthless. And I've said this before, there's a crisis of Western epistemology here. Because if no one believes anything, what is knowledge? Who has authority? You can say anything and it's true, right? And this is just saying online. Anything becomes truth because people don't trust the traditional sources of knowledge. So they'll trust Tony down the road over me and you and all our peers who are sitting there and who peer-reviewed pieces of work. They'd rather trust Tony because he sees Tony, and Tony goes through what he goes through. And that's a madness.
It is a madness. And I guess the other thing, as well as realising how much the government were basically lying to us and gambling with our lives, is also having to deal with the manifestation of conspiracy theories via our friendship networks, our family networks, like on WhatsApp, so dealing with that, but also dealing with people that are close to us, sort of really filtering or on the edge of talking about, give an example, using really nationalist rhetoric and also like severe and what I would describe as severe and clearly saying things are anti-Chinese, like the xenophobia and the racism. And these are people that like I would consider reasonable. Like,
but how do you explain the unknown? Like that's not what you're.
I need to ask someone.
You have to, when you're trying to explain the unknown, this is how myth is created. Belief steps in because you don't really understand what's happening. And because no one's been clear from the very start, because, like I said, there's a distrust of traditional authority, but also there's a lack of knowledge on this particular subject. Now, like I said, I gave, at the start of the kind of podcast, I said there was 3 examples. South Korea is the best example because they were very clear from the start with their people. Openness, transparency, and testing. Now, China, because it's a totalitarian state, they don't have to do that. They can just lock them down. Hence, that's why they're getting over it a lot faster. But Britain, in liberal democracies, we can't do that. But because in our particular form of liberal democracies, people have been fast and loose with the truth. Truth is the truth rather than the absolute concept that it can be. They've chosen to use it as a relative concept that it can be as well. So they play fast and loose with it. So they'll say stuff which might be partially true, or from a certain perspective it's true, or they haven't wholly told you a lie, but they haven't been fully honest with someone. And this has created a kind of distrust in everyone. And you can't have a democracy with this kind of level of distrust, man. And you can see it now. The system's under pressure. Economics, the fundamental basis of economics is confidence, right? Yeah. And confidence is, you have to have trust in institutions, trust in the place that your money's going to be safe. Right now, no one trusts anyone. And look at the state it's got us in, where your next door neighbour won't even give you listen, I need blue, bro. Nah, bro. Go down the road, bro. Listen, that's how it's got.
Obviously, there's examples of community organising, which is brilliant, and it's so good seeing people looking after each other. I love seeing all that stuff. But equally, and I guess this is my cynical or maybe sociological imagination coming through, getting messages or a chain of messages from friends and family about being able to volunteer with the NHS. And it's well, for me personally, I can't because I've got a high-risk household, but it didn't need to be like this. You've cut tens of thousands of beds in the NHS over the past 10 years. You have disrupted any kind of structure that we could have had to fight what is happening here. And now people are being oh, come on, you've got to volunteer, you've got to help everyone, you've got to help everyone. Of course we need volunteering is amazing. I totally agree with that. But seeing the government push it through like some sort of patriotic act, when literally the reason why we're in this situation because they've been so fucking violent is just a complete fuckery.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. I was trying to say to people, what's upsetting is people voted for this. People asked for this. People enjoyed this. So as long as I was all right, it was that kind of thing. So you broke down class bonds. You broke down all these forms of solidarity. For what? Market efficiency. The market's not saving no one right now, right?
No.
Where's the invisible hand? The invisible hand's gone. It's fled. It's fled. It's got coronavirus itself. It's fled. See, this is the thing. They thought the markets, they talked about the markets like there was some kind of a person that was going to look after you. No, it didn't do anything. In fact, who said it the other day? I think it was Dan. Neoliberalism failed. Yeah, neoliberalism failed because you can't even own your own home. You can't buy your own home. That was a dream, right? You could buy no kid can afford to buy their own home. And now with the what the media are calling the Greater Depression that's coming, no one's buying fuck all. Right, standard. I'm not even able to sell my phone. No way, that's not going to happen. But
you might have to start selling your trainers.
No, listen, no way. That's being buried with me.
So I guess this might be, obviously this is our first episode, but I guess this might be the calm before the storm episode. And that's what people don't realise, it's about to go down.
It's not even the calm before the storm, right? It took 3 years, right, for the depression to kick in. The depression, the first one, in 1929, right? You have to understand that period from here to Japan to China, it was full of dictators, man. People were upset, but badly disillusioned with government. So, for example, in Germany, people were upset with the Weimar Republic, that democracy. They didn't understand the state. Men were in crisis, right? And Hitler promised men jobs. In fact, Mussolini promised men jobs. We're going to bring back men stuff. We have this crisis going on. We have similarities, right? We're at a very low point. And our leaders, people don't have faith in these leaders. People don't have faith in democracies. So other ideologies seem a lot more appealing. A strong man. You want strong men to take over. Look what happened in America. So this is the thing. Right now, I told people this. Don't fuck with nationalism in Europe. Europe's got a bad run with nationalism. Yeah. And now look what's happened, man. You've pandered to this nationalistic tendency in people, and now people can't get along. They look to blame everyone but themselves. Listen, I'm part of that shit. I want old enough to vote for Thatcher and all that. But I was part of the Labour generation. Tony Blair, he was fucking mashing people up at the same time. So listen, I take responsibility for that, but I'm also savvy enough to understand we can't be like this no more. We can't.
And I guess that's where, just bringing this to a close, episode 1 of the T's and C's, the reflection, One of the things that I'm feeling a little bit down about this week is that it feels like it's going to take a long time for people to realise that neoliberalism isn't the one, and that actually maybe lessons won't be learned. How many people have to die for lessons to be learned?
Enough for this system to break down, right? So right now, what's the first thing to do when the capital starts going funny? So they asked Trump a question. Prior to the pandemic breaking out, did you remove your assets? So obviously he's a president, but he's also a businessman. So he's got assets. Of course he did, but he never said yes. He did, but his answer, his silence, he said yes. So what we need to do is those oligarchs that are just so greedy, we need to hold them to account and say, listen, you can't roll. I don't care if you make money, but don't be a billionaire. You don't need to be a billionaire. You've got so much money, why don't we just help a man out, right? All we want is a fair opportunity. I don't want your money, I want the opportunity. That's all.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us for episode 1 of The Reflection. As we said in the beginning, we are adding more layers and more tiers to our Patreon so we can bring on anti-racist activists that are working on the periphery of academia to give them some monies. Look after yourselves and your family.
Take care.